you cannot show and you cannot say Nazis bad and then show something like this. Okay? Devotion that doesn't seem even actually that bad.
Yeah, because no one like devoted to anything has ever been a bad guy, right? First of all, I would like to promise everyone that this is not going to become a gaming channel. However, I would like to explore serious political analyses of video games from time to time, just to broaden my audience a little. This video is not so much that, it's more so a compulsion to respond to someone so fucking stupid, yet quite popular and influential that I had to take the opportunity. That someone is Qwazar77, who is somewhat adjacent to the infamous Asmongold, who is the rat physiognomy Zog Goblin motherfucker who admitted to using a dead rat as an alarm clock.
The thing is, I used to use a dead rat as an alarm clock, actually, for my stream, because basically what happened was, whenever the sun would come up, it would start cooking the corpse of the rat, and then it would start smelling again, and then the smell would wake me up. So I would use the rat effectively as an alarm clock, and as soon as it got hot enough, it would wake me up, and then I would know, oh shit, it's time to stream.
So with that understood, I think you can see why I'm making this video. This guy is low-hanging fruit that might guarantee getting into an algorithm. What Qwazar77 does is he basically incoherently rambles about video games being woke, which is something I really wouldn't care about, except he stumbled into my turf, which is the Metro games and 20th century political ideology. He made a video regarding the upcoming Metro game. The video is titled Metro 2039 is Millennial Trash Now. In that video, he just rambles incoherently, saying things like, the gameplay looks fake, that looks stupid, oh, but that kind of looks cool, and other bullshit that just reveals he's like mentally 14. But what really gets me is that his suggestions, based on a short trailer, mind you, for how the game should portray the Fourth Reich, make him guilty of what he is accusing the Metro developers of, which is being millennial slop writers. Qwazar77 is quite apparently a late millennial, by the way.
It's the fact that they're just... This is a fucking commie lot. That's probably not the best way to call it, but this is just some kind of leftist fucking dribble. This is leftist millennial shit writing at its finest right here. You have the Nazis, and just because it's the Nazis, you're instantaneously supposed to be like, oh my god, such a threat, blah blah. This is an absolute failure. This is what leftists, this is what millennials don't understand when they do writing. They think that you just name something Nazi that instantaneously is going to be like, oh my god, it's the biggest threat in the universe. It's the biggest. And then they do this shit. Okay? They don't show you why they're bad. In the first games, remember what the Nazis did? They actually did the measurements of the skulls and thing, and from that they based do you live or die. Okay? That was a visible reason why they were bad, and you shouldn't support them, and you shouldn't like them, and you should think of them as bad. Very simple, very straightforward, very easy, perfect, simplistic design. You don't need a lot more. And here, we're saying, oh, look at the Nazis, they're so evil. They're literally erecting statues in the post-apocalypse. I'm sorry, even if they're evil, as long as they're doing that, I kind of think that's better than the alternative of dying in a metro and getting eaten by a rat.
The way you want the developers to portray the Fourth Reich, being cartoonishly evil, committing atrocities willy-nilly, doing nothing but oppressing people, etc., would actually be millennial slop writing and woke, as that is essentially the basic Zog slop narrative that you are allowed to tell about National Socialism, which has been recycled since the end of World War II with few exceptions. The inadequacy of that sort of critique of National Socialism is probably why we are today seeing such a resurgence in it, now that people have access to more information. It seems to me, at least, that the developers of the Metro games are going for a more sophisticated, multifaceted criticism of National Socialism through their portrayal of the Fourth Reich. More sophisticated than how the Fourth Reich has been portrayed in the games before. Also, the significance of the scene in Metro 2033 in which Artyom is being interrogated by a Fourth Reich officer who is using craniology is that, given the context of the post-apocalypse, something as heinously evil as extermination eugenics has some reason to it. The Fourth Reich in the games is trying to weed out genetic mutations that, given the severity of radiation from a post-nuclear apocalypse, would be very real and a problem so horrendous and immediate to deal with if you want any hope to rescue humanity from the post-nuclear apocalypse. This sort of perspective is what the Metro world is about. It is about the amoral nature of politics. I also think the inability for most people to grasp that politics are inherently amoral is why most people are very stupid politically. People aren't looking to discover any sort of fundamental truth about human civilization to organize a more civilized and forward-thinking society away from the problems that have plagued us in history. Rather, they want to pick a side which they see as morally superior to others so that they can feel morally superior. At my best, I've always thought that through my political journey in content creation, I've attached myself to the ideas, movements, and regimes associated with Marxism and now fascism, not because I believe they were moral guardians of some sacred way of life, but because I have always understood the amoral nature of politics. Obviously, your politics should be about seeking truth, and that inherently has a moral component to it, but you can do that without falling into inept and superficial, narcissistic, self-aggrandizing moralism. To think politically is to figure out what is virtuous and noble in your aims, and then know how to proceed towards those aims in a fashion that takes into account that your approach towards realizing them is necessarily and inherently going to be amoral, with plenty of barriers that makes the seamless implementation of your aims from the seat of power into reality impossible. Take someone fanatically devoted to Marxism-Leninism like Haas, for example. Beneath the rhetoric and posturing towards the moral superiority of Marxism-Leninism, I can tell that he is smart enough to understand that Stalin's USSR wasn't a wholesome, flawless paradise where nothing bad happened. I know he is self-aware enough to see that his posturing of Marxist-Leninist moral superiority to Western capitalism is merely a gimmick that he plays on his audience, and that beneath that, he is clearly aware of the amoral nature of politics, where what makes your politics correct isn't whether you are good, but whether what you are striving for is rooted in a fundamental truth that persists regardless of your amoral or even ruthless behavior, because you are going about it in a way that matches with the step of reality towards your ideals. The reason why I have always hated the adherents of liberal democratic capitalism is because they always come from this place of really inane, gay moral superiority posturing, neglecting the fact that their politics is also amoral and has in reality realized the exact opposite of what they claim they are for. The liberal democratic world is not meaningfully liberal, democratic, or even really capitalist. It is a plutocratic, rentier, banker control society that keeps itself in power through subversion of the intellect and the passions. This is why I have pledged myself in the past to Marxism and now fascism, or rather specifically Sorelian, syndicalist, Proudhonian, libertarian, socialist, anarcho-fascism, or whatever you want to call this schizophrenic mess of an artifice that I have pulled from the depths of the labyrinths of Apocrypha that I believe approximates the true aims of proletarian socialism. I recognize that communism has succeeded in marching in step with the logical development out of the antagonisms within capitalism faster and more efficiently than liberal democracy and social democracy have, but it has failed in marking any meaningful departure from the trajectory of capitalist antagonism towards a true form of proletarian socialism. I have moved towards fascism mainly because of my belief in proletarian socialism, which has developed through my studies into a recognition that fascist syndicalism most closely conforms to the Proudhonian and Sorelian conceptions of socialism that Marx failed to consider or was proven wrong about, even on the level of the development of his own ideas in history. Okay, wow, that was quite the long but very important and necessary tangent. But yes, Metro is fundamentally about the amoral nature of human politics.
This is, and look at this, sprawling industry, getting back to humanity. Oh, but the Nazis are. You can't show this and like, I understand that this idea probably hits really hard if you're a fucking leftist lunatic. I understand that this is a 10 out of 10, probably. But you're not gonna buy the game. You never support the things you claim. So this should be targeting normal people, and normal people are like, I mean, it looks like the Nazis are kind of doing a good job here. Like, what is this supposed to be? Is this really supposed to be that bad?
So, no one denies that National Socialist Germany educated its citizenry, industrialized, pursued economic development, and built infrastructure. If this is all it takes to absolve a regime of any wrongdoing, then I have bad news for you.
This is, and look at this, sprawling industry, getting back to humanity.
Stalin's USSR also had all of those things too. But clearly you're not a big fan of that though, are you?
This is a fucking commie a lot.
Now, I'm the kind of guy who has a lot of questions about certain events and narratives surrounding National Socialist Germany, if you catch my drift. But I still think overall, they were pretty bad guys. Okay, and I'll get into that. So it seems to me that what the developers of Metro are going for here is that while the Fourth Reich are bringing progress in industry to the post-apocalypse, they are still deeply flawed and fucking brutal, right? Just like how reality plays out with industrial society and at every other stage of human development. So you have to think about this in the context of reindustrializing the post-apocalypse. If you know anything about the history of industrial development or political economy, you would know that reindustrializing after a nuclear apocalypse would be extremely fucking brutal. Would it be better than living in the metro, eating rats and barely surviving? In some ways yes, and in some ways no.
Now, it's not only just old infrastructure of cardboard and wood and shit cobbled together. We literally have what seems like giant new sprawling buildings. The metro setting at this point is not apocalyptic. It's just not if they're gonna do this. At the start, we were promised that we're gonna return to the itty-gritty, evil type of in metro. Things are scary, and that every time you deal with the outside, it's bad.
So, Metro as a post-apocalyptic setting is not this gunslinging, bandolier, rogue, Wild West story of the Bethesda Fallout games. Metro is more along the lines of the movie Threads.
If we are to survive these difficult early months and establish a firm base for the redevelopment of our country, then we must concentrate all our energies on agricultural production.
Collecting this diminished first harvest is now literally a matter of life and death. chronic fuel shortages mean that this could be one of the last times tractors and combine harvesters are used in Britain.
In the Metro games, it is very obvious that some semblance of industrial society continues in the Metro, and elsewhere if you've played Exodus. They manufacture weapons and munitions, there are working trains, and there are also industrial society political ideologies like National Socialism in the Fourth Reich, Marxism-Leninism with the Red Line, and liberal capitalism with Hansa, right? So obviously a victorious Fourth Reich, or really any of the main factions, would build up industry and manufacturing given the promise of outside expansion that was established in Exodus and their total control of the Metro. Here's the thing. Metro isn't really about who is the good guy and who is the bad guy. All of the factions, regardless of the National Socialist Fourth Reich, the Marxist-Leninist Red Line, or the liberal capitalist Hansa, are very amoral, with each having some sort of reason behind what they are doing. Ultimately, they are remnants of humanity organized under the methods and doctrines of the past, desperately trying to salvage a future from what is left. It is a story about the uncomfortable and gritty nature of human perseverance. To persevere in the face of insurmountable odds doesn't mean that you are a perfectly moral person, which most stories of this nature try to say. It means that you do what is required to succeed. There is also the other layer that all of these factions are basically like experimental containment zones controlled by a secret remnant of the Russian military that is aware of the outside world and potential for a resettlement, but believes the war against them still isn't over. They are doing what they see as necessary to persevere, despite the amoral character of their actions. Anyways, that's pretty much all there was that was worth responding to in this shitty fucking video. Maybe it gets me into some algorithm, maybe it doesn't. Either way, I think we got a good look into the mind of the average adult child gamer who has woke derangement syndrome to the point where he thinks the only way you can criticize Nazis is if you constantly portray them as mindlessly evil. Which is exactly what the woke leftists and Zogcons have in common, and why they are two manifestations of the same thing. So long as our culture is caught between the polarity of woke leftist and Zogcon, we will continue to decline in our collective intelligence. This video is sort of just an attempt at getting into an algorithm to accelerate the pretty significant growth this channel has been getting lately. But if you weren't a fan, that's okay. We will be returning to form in the next installment where we will explore the occult origins of mutualism. Peace.